I made just about every mistake you could make when I was into this business because there were no books out there.
Hmm.
So that was a kind of a light to me. I wanted to have a book that I would have wanted when I was starting out, and I felt that I could take 3 years off of somebody's learning curve, so they wouldn't have to make all the mistakes that I made if I put this book out. And so I began writing just little 700 word pieces on a blog. I was going to just have a blog out there that gave this, and then after a few months, I went, well, maybe this is a book.
What is happening, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the 52 Qs podcast, which is dedicated to all things production and library music, where we talk about industry topics and take deep dives into the different aspects of being a working production music composer. If this is your first time here, welcome. My name is Dave Croft, and I'm a professional composer with hundreds of placements ranging from the NFL to Food Network, as well as an educator with nearly 25 years experience teaching music to career-minded composers just like you. This episode is made possible thanks to the support of the family, friends, and patron subscribers of 52Qs who have really helped keep everything running. We are 100% community supported, so if you want to learn more about how you can help support 52Qs while also unlocking exclusive subscriber perks like live streams, workshops, Zoom coaching sessions, and a ton more, then be sure to click on the links in the description for more information. You know, there's no shortage of YouTube channels about production music. I mean, you're watching one of them right now, or you might be listening to this, on the audio on the go, but there aren't that many books about production music. So when I had the opportunity to sit down with one of the few people really putting out great books about production music, I was more than happy to jump at the chance. I am so happy to have one of my favorite authors and one of the first authors I can remember when I went into my production music journey. The author, the composer, writer from everything from music featured in Star Trek Strange New Worlds to Dancing with the Stars, Duck Dynasty, The Daily Show, Trading Spaces, Scorpion, The Vampire Diaries, and trust me, friends, when I say that is a small sliver of the credits that the Dean Krippaehne has to his credit list. Dean, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast.
Oh man, thanks for having me. Good to be hanging out and chatting today.
Yeah, absolutely. It was I think it was fortune or the universe conspiring in our favors when at the Taxi Road Rally we happened to be sitting next to each other during one of the mentoring sessions, and I was like, I think that's Dean Krippaehne. Hey, Dean, and we introduced myself. Huge fan of your books, and we're going to be talking all about the books. But I just want to start off, and I start off most of my interviews this way because there are so many different paths into the production music industry. What did your journey look like?
It was the accidental journey, I think, which some people are. I was, like a lot of musicians, I played in bands, had a little demo recording studio back in the late 80s, early 90s, and was, trying to be a big famous star, rock and roll star. And that obviously didn't work. But just kept recording, kept writing, kept playing. And it really was joining Taxi, which both of us are very familiar with, that kind of got me into it. Although when I was first joined Taxi, I was still writing songs and trying to pitch them to recording artists. It was only by accident that I had recorded what I thought was acid jazz project. It turned out to be a little more neo soul project for an indie label that went kaput, and I ended up owning the masters to it. And there was a ad in Taxi, one of their submission deals that I saw for neo soul songs for a TV show, and I thought, well, hey, I have these; they're sitting around. Let me pitch them. I pitched them, They got signed by a music library, and they went right into a soap opera that was on at the time called One Life to Live.
Oh yeah.
And I still didn't think much about it until I got my royalty checks 9 months later or a year later, and I saw that I got used in quite a few episodes, but one episode in particular, the song played 3 different times, and I got paid each time it played in one episode. And I looked at the money and looked at the show that was on 5 days a week and went, "Oh, you could." There's a lot of shows out there. You might be able to make some money at this thing. And that's really that was when I started thinking about it. And there again, started going to the Taxi Road rallies, the convention that they have, the conference they have every November, and started meeting people and hearing stuff. And that's really was the beginning of my journey.
Wow. So you had that kind of aha moment of seeing the royalties, not thinking much of it, but then you realize,
Yeah.
and that's for that to be your first placement. That's a huge placement. We're not talking about a little background, in the very, very, sliver of a play of a reality show. I mean, One Life to
Yeah.
Live.
It was a good placement on a major network, and I might have been a little spoiled by the amount of money that because as maybe some of your viewers don't know, the major networks do pay more than cable networks or some streaming services. But yeah, it was it was a great initiation and an eye opener to me.
Yeah, absolutely. And was it your songwriting prowess and collaborations that earned you the hardware right behind you on the wall, the
Oh yeah,
gold and the platinum records?
those the ones directly behind me
Yeah.
are that's songwriting from a European artist, Stephanie Heinzman,
Mm-hmm.
who I have a song on a record of hers some years ago. And yeah, songwriting, because I came into this whole business as a songwriter, so vocal songs, and that's really was my love and my passion and what I was trying to do. I learned as I started stepping into this business, I learned quite quickly that probably 90% or more of the music used in TV ads, film, games is doesn't have vocals on it. It's
Mm.
an instrumental. So I quickly went into that and found out I could do that instrumental things way quicker than I could do vocal songs. It just takes so much time to get lyrics right in vocal songs. I still love that. That's probably my main love. But yeah, I saw this as I think you did and other people did. This is when you start tiptoeing into it, and you have some realizations. And one of them is doing music for film, TV, ads, games is one of the few areas in recorded music where you can, and composing and songwriting, where you can actually build a career for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So many of the other things are like, well, roll the dice and let me see if Taylor Swift is going to record my song. And it was that appealed to me too, that I could actually work and build a career out of this. So
Now, one of the things that I'm hearing is kind of a resurgence of vocal music and songs being sought after by the libraries. Now, is this a new trend, or is this something that's always been there, but now instrumental composers are trying to get hip to it?
I don't know if it's a new trend or not, but there does seem to be a lot more when I see briefs coming by and ads coming out from different libraries. They're looking for really good vocal songs, and maybe that's because they can get feature placements sometimes with them, which pay a lot more than background music. Maybe there is a trend going on where vocals. I know that the last probably 2.5 years, I had concentrated on doing vocal songs a lot more. Vocal
Yeah.
songs have probably been 10% for 15 years of what I did, and now the last 3 years they were probably 80% of what I did. I was really concentrating, going, I'm going to do vocal songs again. I'm going to try to get them signed and get them placed, and pick one genre at a time. I happen to pick old jazz, 1950s vocal jazz standards.
Nice.
I always loved that music. I've had
Yeah.
some success with it before, so I started writing those songs, and now it's where. In fact, the Star Trek thing that you mentioned, that was a vocal jazz song that got in for one of their lounge scenes in that show. So
Oh, heck
yeah,
yeah.
so it's working. It's working.
So if what would be your advice to maybe an instrumental composer who is kind of wanting to get into that side of things? Would it be find a collaborator, or would it to be just go for it, get a rhyming dictionary, or what would be your advice for an instrumentalist wanting to get into vocal
Yeah,
music?
if you're a instrumental composer, yeah, all those things. First and foremost is I would think try to identify the one or two types of music that you're already pretty good at and or maybe great at, instead of choosing, oh, let me take a shot at dramedy and tension
Mm.
and southern rock and all. No, to try to identify those things that you're already really good at and get great at them. And maybe that involves a collaborator. Maybe, I think it's collaborations are great. I mean, two heads are better than one, or three heads. The old saying is quite often true. And I enjoy collaborating. I don't get to do it enough, but yeah, I would say concentrate and get in the doors. You usually get in with the things you're really good at first, and then start branching out and into maybe some other genres. But just get really good, learn all your gear inside out. Learn your sounds. To me, that's a big thing. Anybody can with money can go out and buy great software, and you can have, maybe you're a guitar player, or maybe you're a keyboard player, maybe you're a trumpet player, whatever. You have that instrument that is really good. But if you're using virtual instruments, you need to learn how to articulate them.
Mm.
You may not be a viola player, but you may have viola parts in your productions. Well, you need you can't just press the keyboard down and it may sound great, but it's not going to feel like a real viola player there. So, and that goes for every instrument. I think I had the great fortune. I'm a guitar player and a keyboard player. I'm not a bass player or a drummer, but I played in bands for years and years and years, and sat or stood next to bass players and
Mhm.
right next to drummers. So I hear those parts in my head because I did spend so many years playing in rock bands, pop bands, lounge bands, all of the above. Um, so I was able to know what a drum kit should do, to know what a bass player should play, or how they would play. Are they playing with a pick? Are they playing with fingers? Is it a Fender P bass? Is it,
Mm.
all the various things? How long do you hold a note? If you're just a keyboard player playing that on there, well, you may be holding notes way too long or cutting them way too short. That's right for whatever genre you're doing. So really, with every instrument, learning the articulations, that takes some time, but boy, the templates are out there. I mean, there's world-class guitar players, bass players, trumpeters, sax players, violas out there. Listen to them, figure out what they're doing, and emulate that.
Yeah, it starts with knowing what it should sound like so that you
Yeah.
know how to recreate it in the DAW.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
absolutely.
Yep.
You mentioned, well, actually, before, do you have any advice for songwriters looking to get into the instrumental side of things?
That would have been my path. In fact, the first couple things that happened for me, I turned down. I don't write. I don't know if I can't do that. But if you're a songwriter, um, first of all, if you're pitching your songs and your song gets in, they're always, when you're recording a song, have the version with your vocal on it, and then also run a version where you mute the vocal, which is just the pad. Every music library, every music supervisor will want that. Why will they want that? Because a lot of times they'll use part of your vocal. Sometimes they won't use any of the vocal, but they may use 10 seconds of the vocal, but then the actor's dialogue starts, and your vocal will conflict if there are actors talking. So then they need to dub in the instrumental version. But that's first advice I'd give. And the second I would give is, if you're already writing and producing songs, well, you're halfway there. You know how to, do chord progressions and do melody. Just start taking those chord progressions, those grooves, those melodies, and doing instrumentals with them. Only not instrumentals in the sense that you usually don't use quite as much melody in a cue, as we call them, an instrumental cue for film and TV. So learning how to modify that. And what I would do is I would go to some of the major big libraries, for example, like a library like Megatrax, just for example. There's 7, 8, 10 major libraries. Go to their search function of whatever genre if you want to do tension music, go in there and type in tension or some, tension, anxiety, whatever, and listen to the people that are already signed and already getting placed. That's your template. Listen how they build. They usually start fairly sparse in most genres, and every 4 to 8 measures, they either add an instrument or add an element that increases the emotion, because when we're writing cues or instrumental cues, we are writing moods. We're not telling a lyrical story, which you would in a song, or conveying a lyrical emotion as you would in a song. You're trying to convey that emotion, whether it's anxiety, tension, or whether it's mischievous. Or is that mischievous or mischievous?
I think we'll allow both.
Yeah, right. Whatever, or whether it's heartfelt, whether it's sad, whether it's contemplative, reflective, all those emotions we have to convey in our cues, and they have to, from measure 1, you have to know what that emotion is, but then you have to grow that emotion, because all the scenes will want to grow. I mean, they want, that's what the movies are. They're playing with our emotions and building our emotions, movies, TV shows, all that. So I feel like I'm running off on a tangent here. Steer me back.
No, I think that goes right in line with my question, which is, I've worked with many songwriters or instrumental composers who write music as art, and trying to kind of bring them back in and simplify and keep a consistent mood or emotion, because a cue, quite frankly, doesn't need to tell nearly as an in-depth hero's journey as you would want in a song. And so kind of wrestling folks, kind of staying in one lane so that an editor can find the best use for it. Yeah, I found that to be true.
Absolutely. Yeah. You want whatever emotion, whatever mood you're conveying in that, stay with that for the whole. Usually people will ask, music supervisors, libraries will ask for generally a 2-minute cue. That it can be 1 minute and 50 seconds or 2 minutes and 10 seconds, but generally speaking, and some will ask for different lengths, but in that should say 2, that's a real common standard length that they will ask for. And you want to keep that emotion consistent all the way throughout. Don't, veer off don't be in 4/4 and then go to a 3/4 or whatever. Stay in the same key, stay in the same emotion, and build it throughout. And that's, nothing will make you look like a pro right away. Then do that all the way through, and
regardless of whatever your muse is telling you, you have to kind of tell them to take a back seat, because we're working here.
Yeah, and I think it really that's an important point, that those of us who still want to create pure art that comes from our soul, who cares where it flies, still do that once in a while. It's just, here's this money-making career opportunity to take all of the skills and the talent that you have, and here's a target that you need to hit for. If you want to do this stuff, look at your target and hit it. And then, on the days when you don't want to, just, feed your soul.
Yeah,
do whatever you want to
go make your art. Yeah, I tell my folks, you don't have to choose. It's not a binary decision. You don't have to be this or that. You can make production music by day, art by night, or vice versa. There's room in your spirit for all of that.
Well, and I like the that's great advice. I like the cue business because you always have a target. You
Hmm.
have a target that you need to hit, and within that target, you can bring your art, bring your muse, bring your creativity to make it just a little bit different, or do something, you know. Do something that sets it above the rest. So yeah, it's much more a craft, but you can bring your own personal art into it as long as you stay within the target range.
Yeah.
So I really enjoyed. When I was songwriting for artists, going down to Nashville or going to LA. It's you know what Kenny Chesney's kind of doing. Yeah, he's kind of island country.
Hmm.
You know what different people are doing, but still you're doing some kind of a parameter, but it's really hard to find a target. You're just writing these songs and shooting, throwing darts at wherever you can throw them, and yeah, yeah. I
Yeah.
mean,
Well,
if you're
that.
doing your own thing as a singer songwriter, do your own thing too. Maybe you'll get lucky and one of those songs will be in the foreground or be in a major motion picture, and hey, it can break your career.
Yeah. I just found that to be a heavy. It was a heavy burden, of the weight of art and the blank daw and everything that comes out has to be like this amazing expression of my inner soul, and that's a heavy ask when you're trying to make music that's going to go underneath, a temper tantrum in Toddlers and Tiaras, right?
Right, right.
It's
It's so I love it when not to dwell on the having a target or too much, but actually right here on my desk I'm so thankful when I actually get a real brief from a library, and there's actually this is a production company for a major network that wanted me to do not cues, but they actually wanted me to do instrumentals of like 1950s, 60s jazz songs, and they gave me all of the various things, swing, improvisation, call and response, blue notes, syncopation, all that. But then they also gave me these songs. Okay, Thelonious Monk, Straight No Chaser, Miles Davis, So What, Duke Ellington, Coltrane, In a Sentimental Mood. And I'm like, okay, those are my templates. Let me just
Yep.
go there and use the vibe that they have there, not copy what they're doing, but use the vibe that each one of those artists had, and produce those songs. And then, of course, I'm not a sax player or trumpet player, so I had to hire a couple great people that could handle, Coltrane or
Yeah, yeah, or Miles, right?
yeah, but I love having that kind of a target.
Yeah, yeah, and your breadth of experience, your depth of experience, you've parlayed that into a handful of books, which are my absolute favorite books: Demystifying the Cue, Demystifying the Genre, and Write, Submit, Forget, Repeat. So tell us a little bit about how those books came about, and how each one really kind of says what each one's really about, and what each one unpacks.
Well, they're really the books. The first book, which was Demystifying the Cue, that came about. I don't know, 10 years or so into the cue business, and I learned so much from my own experience, from libraries, from music supervisors, from the community that I was now involved in, from the 30 or 40 people that I knew that were doing the same thing. And everybody had their own little tricks. And what I began to realize before writing that book was I made just about every mistake you could make when I was into this business, because there were no books out there.
Hmm.
So that was a kind of a light to me. I wanted to have a book that I would have wanted when I was starting out, and I felt that I could take 3 years off of somebody's learning curve, so they wouldn't have to make all the mistakes that I made if I put this book out. Um, so I began writing just little 700 word pieces on a blog. I was going to just have a blog out there that gave this. And then after a few months, I went, well, maybe this is a book. And so I figured out how to, do all that stuff. So yeah, in the first book, Demystifying the Cue, that's how it all came about. I also had talked to a kind of a career advisor at that point, and I said, how can I become an expert in this business where I'm really not an expert? He said, well, there's two ways. You can either get a PhD, and I thought, well, okay, I've had some college, but that's going to cost me a couple $100,000.
That'll take a while too.
Or I can write a book, which won't really cost me anything, and I can maybe I'll make $50,000 on it. Anyway, those are the two ways business wise where you can be perceived as an expert. So that was part of that whole journey too. I thought, yeah, I'm not going to spend another 4 or 5 years getting a PhD and spend all that money at this point in my life.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on there. There is a third way that I'm discovering.
Yeah,
start a YouTube channel.
Yeah, right.
That helps.
That is. I think that's really, really valid. And actually, I've recorded a bunch of stuff. I'm not starting a YouTube channel. I'm not going to do a podcast per se, but I am going to do a series of little 5-minute tips and tricks of the business, which a lot of them are the same thing that are in some of my books. So many people use this audio visual medium that we have now, as opposed to opening up a book and flipping through pages. So yeah, sometime they may not be out this year, or it may be out. I'm also trying to write a new book in the process, so I don't know which. And then it gets slammed with more requests from music labs.
And then, do the job. Boy, do I understand that, balancing teaching and doing a channel and a podcast, when that podcast is about composing and about doing the work and balancing, the work and the education. It's tough. It can be really tough.
It is really, that's, so yeah, I don't know if the new book, I hope to have that done and out this year, but as I said, Demystifying the Cue was the first one. Demystifying the genre was really my attempt to show people how to reverse engineer music that was out there. If you want to do a Taylor Swift song or a Beyonce song or any instrumental cue, simply go, the templates are out there. And what is the kick drum doing? What is the hi-hat doing? What tempo is it in? What's the chord structure? What is the, and go right there and reverse engineer it. And so it actually came from, I think a friend of mine who I think are well acquainted with too, Steve Barden, who also has written great books. He was doing Michael Laskow of Taxi had him on some years ago, showing how he created swamp tunes or something like that. And he went through the process with his dobro, with his acoustic guitar. And I thought, wow, that would make a good book if somebody wrote that. So that really spurred on that one. And then, of course, the third one that you mentioned, write, submit, forget, repeat, which is a great mantra to have. That one's a little more generalized. I wrote it not specifically to the music community, but just to the art community. And it has more to do with the psychological roadblocks that can stop us in our tracks, both in music, in our art, but also in life. And so that's what that one is mostly about.
Yeah, it really reminds me of Write, Submit, Forget, Repeat. Reminds me a lot of War of Art by Stephen Pressfield, because it's kind of these small vignettes, these bite-sized things. It's not a tough read. It's easy to pick up and put down. Looks great on the Kindle, by the way. I read it on an iPad, and all of these are really good. Of course, everybody, we're going to have links to this in the show notes, so you can be hip to that. And if you haven't already, I mean, it's not going to break the bank. We're not talking about like a college, chemistry book here. This is really, really, really great books. And I can't remember, are those audiobooks yet? And if not,
no. People have asked me about that, and I think as we were talking before this, that's a whole nother animal.
Yes. Yeah. No, for the record, I am not volunteering. I am done with that industry. I've tried it. I've tried it, but As
So
a consumer of audiobooks, I wish those were audiobooks.
yeah, and that may happen at some point, but that's a whole nother animal of and a lot of time and a lot of, and they're just, as you've alluded to, there's so many opportunities in life, and when you start having some success, they just start falling out of the sky, and you really have to pick and choose. What am I going to do? What's the smart thing to do? What can help people, or what helps keep food on my table?
Yeah.
And yeah, I have way more ideas than I have time.
I have a whole book full of ideas here. Yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you. Yeah, let's circle back to Taxi. As you can imagine, a community like 52 Qs, Taxi looms really large in the community because it is one of the most direct ways that you can have an inroad into the industry, to the point where, I've been with Taxi for several years. And this year, 2023, is my personal year of Taxi, where I'm writing a Taxi brief every week and I'm tracking those cues across, their placements and everything else. So Taxi is with a capital T, looms really large in the community. As someone who has had great success with Taxi, and if you mentioned that it was through Taxi that you got the One Life to Live gig. So, I mean, you're home run, first at bat, well done.
Yeah.
What are some things that maybe you've seen composers new to the industry, new to Taxi, some things that you see kind of over and over that might be barriers for their success, specifically with Taxi?
I think first of all is read the briefs and listen to the songs. When Taxi, for those who don't know, Taxi sends out in what libraries or music supervisors or publishers are looking for. And usually there's a small brief of the type of music that they want, and then they'll have up to 3 examples of songs or cues that a library, for instance, may be looking for. And I would say, first and foremost, read the brief and then listen to all 3 of the examples and try to find what is the common denominator. They may be a little bit different, these things, but there's usually a common denominator with these music. So yeah, I would say first and foremost, listen to that and really study it. Just really study it. And as I've said before, go to one of the major libraries, use their search function, find cues that are in whatever genre that is, and listen to what the people that already had success, listen to what they're doing, study those things. It's basically going back to college and study the things, do your homework, take your time. And that's assuming that you've already studied all your virtual instruments, all your guitar, all your stuff, and you can get good sounds and good articulations out of them. And then use those 3 songs that Taxi does, and what you find in the libraries. Use those as templates and as teaching tools. Those are your instructors, and then try and also don't just jump at everything per se to pitch. When the listings come by, that's something that you're already pretty good in or you already have a handle on, jump on those. I mean, I think it's fine to go and off on, if you want to do, hip hop polka music or something, then that's fine to experiment around with it, but don't be necessarily thinking that you're going to have tons of success out of the box with something that you've never done before. And that's probably a good lesson in all of life. But it goes back to really studying, really listening to that music, learning all your articulations, even taking a song. I did this at the beginning. I would take songs, make an MP3 out of them, and I'd stick them right in my DAW, right in my DAW, and I'd listen to the kick, listen to the snare, listen to the drums, not only how to do them and what they did, but where are they panned? How are they mixed? What kinds of reverbs or delays are they using? And really study that so that my mixes would be better. Because, I had some engineering experience when I got into this, but I wasn't a gifted engineer by any chance at the beginning. And now, for the most part, my mixes sound pretty good. I know how. And then when you're done mixing, I always tell people this: listen to your mixes on at least 4, if not 5 different sets of speakers. Because it may sound great in your studio, it may sound great in your studio and on your computer speakers, but then you may take it to a real stereo, or it may be like me. I take it out to my Jeep,
Yep.
I put it in the system there, and it sounded great it sounded great in my studio, great in my office, great on my stereo system in my living room. I take it out to my Jeep and I go, oh man, the bass is just too muddy and boomy,
Yep.
which is my biggest problem is I think it's most people's. And so I've got to tweak that a little bit because it needs to sound good on every speaker system that there is. Or if you're lucky and like, I think a friend of both of ours, a guy, Matt Hurt, a longtime Taxi member. Matt, when he was living in LA, he tells the story, he used to live near a Best Buy store. And he knew the manager there. So when he got done with his mixes, he'd go in, this is back in the CD days, he'd stick a CD in their thing, and all their sets of speakers that are lined up, he'd just punch the buttons and listen to it on all the speakers. So if you're lucky enough to have that, it's real quick.
Yeah, you do that now, they'll kick you out.
Yeah,
don't do that now.
Yeah, they probably will. But yeah, all those things I think are, as I think you do too. I've been a mentor and a screener at the Taxi rallies, and listened to a lot of stuff. The quality is really good for a lot of people now, but you do hear people that are just beginning, and right away you can hear, okay, you're either your mix is way out. You don't know the articulations for one of the instruments, and all it takes is one instrument to stick out there, and you're not listening to the song anymore. You're listening to that instrument that's sticking out in a bad way. Structure, all those kinds of things. But as I keep, reiterating, the templates are out there. Go listen to them and study them.
Yeah, and it's never been easier. The access to these things has never been simpler.
Yep.
And I'm to your earlier point about making sure that you are taking shots at things that are already, I'm going to say it a different way, already part of your core competence, right? Your core competency. So that you're not taking a swing at, like an Indian Bhangra track, or you're not going for a metal track and you don't play guitar. And you're like, oh, I've got some sample libraries. So the way I like to think of it this way, when you're submitting taxi briefs, it's kind of like entering a competition, if you will. And you would never think to enter a barbecue competition. Like you wouldn't think of learning to barbecue by entering a barbecue competition.
Yeah, right.
You're going to get a cookbook and you're going to study, you're going to practice at home. And then,
wait, that's a good point. I want to write that down for my next book here.
just asterisk. Well, it's like, yes, you'll get an education, but you're also going up against folks who are professional barbecue cooks. They have all the barbecue tools, and they know everything there is to know about the entire barbecue industry. And you roll in there with your little Weber kettle and charcoal, and you're like, yeah, I'm going to go toe to toe. Again, you'll get an education, but you'll probably get some bumps and bruises along the way. Yeah. Absolutely.
Learn how to barbecue before you enter the competition.
That's right. This is coming from a guy who used to live in Memphis and the big barbecue maybe I just need lunch. I don't know.
Well, that's a great analogy, though. That's good. I am going to write that.
Yeah. Well, I'm a career educator. I think in metaphor and analogy. So absolutely. Yeah. Hey, Dean, if folks wanted to get in touch with you, where could they find you online?
Well, I have a website, and it's my name, Dean Krippaehne. If you're lucky enough to figure out how to spell that, DeanKrippaehne.net. And there's a website on there, and I do believe I have an email on there. And what I often tell people at tax when I'm doing the taxi rallies or other conferences. If you send me an email, I'll answer any question, and put I would say to this thing, if somebody that's watching this, I'd say send me an email and put 52 cues on it so I can know where it's coming from. It gives me a better idea of where they might be heading in how I may answer the question. So yeah, they can, or it's the one I use for music. I'll just say it right here. Is I call it my retro account. I have a business account too, but this is my retro account. It's Dean Kripp, DeanKripp at AOL.com. It's my retro AOL.
You're keeping it real. Did you?
That's all music, and so I know when it comes in there, it has to do with music, unless it's it goes to my spam folder and it's somebody else trying to sell me some drug that'll make me more romantic.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, absolutely. So that's Dean Kripp at AOL. Did that come with a free CD, a free installation CD? And does it say, "You've got mail" every time somebody... Oh, well, we'll absolutely have all of these links in the show notes. But Dean, thank you so much. Really, really appreciate you. And thanks for your books. The books were absolutely game changers for me, and I read them at least once a year. They're fantastic. And so if you're watching this, viewer, listener, go get those books right now. But Dean, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much. And thank you for developing this community that is helping so many people. Thanks a lot.
Once again, a huge word of thanks to Dean for joining me on the show today. And remember, all of his links are in the description below. But that is going to do it for me this week. You definitely want to tune in next week, where I ask the question, is this just your hobby? And if it is that okay? How do you define success? And if you don't have a goal to get hundreds and hundreds of placements, is that all right? Well, we're going to ask that question next week. But as I said, a huge word of thanks to the family, friends, and patron subscribers of 52 Cues who really help keep everything going. We could not do it without your support. So thank you very much. So if you want to join us, head over to 52cues.com where you could subscribe, or you could join for free. We would love to have you. So I hope you've had a stellar week. And remember, friends, that I know, trust, and believe that the universe has amazing plans just for you. Until next time, peace. The 52 Cues podcast is copyright 2023 818 Studios, all rights reserved. The music played on the podcast is copyright of their respective owners and is used with permission and for educational purposes only. For more information, including joining the community and submitting your cue for consideration on the podcast, head over to 52cues.com.